Saturday morning, I asked myself what I wanted to write this week, and I gave myself the word fire. I wanted to write something epic and driving. I also wanted to ease into writing something more orchestral. I'm still getting comfortable with larger scores, and wind and brass instruments are new, and I want to write with them more. The result is this track that sounds like a theme of rebellion from like Andor or Lord of the Rings, which it seems like a good time to be playing around with epic themes of rebellion, for no particular reason. Let's break down how I got here. I started with a long improvisation. I had no plan other than I wanted to do something epic and I wanted it to be in 5/4. So I improvised on piano for about 2.5 minutes just to get a sense of the key that I was working in. Next, I started adding some drums. So I went searching for some toms. Here's your sample searching ASMR. And yada 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 yada. I figured out a sound and I put it in the sampler. I tried this pattern for a bit. Then I was like, I just want to do the pattern from the Isengard theme, which I'm not going to play for you on this video for copyright reasons, but it's the one that goes dun 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 dun, and the brass goes. It's that one. So I knew I wanted to do something inspired by that. So I got into the sampler and I made my drum pattern and I added accents to the notes to create that pattern of the dun 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 dun. And then I just repeated it across the entire project and gave myself 1.5 minutes of drum beat to work with because I decided this track is not going to go longer than 1.5 minutes. The next thing I did was open up the BBC Orchestra Spitfire plugin, which anytime I use these plugins, I'm like thinking of those old 90s commercials, and I'm like, you wouldn't download an orchestra, but I did. Anyway, I started with the tuba and played with doing some tuba and the drums to match with that initial Isengard reference track. And then I realized I didn't want to do tuba as the hero instrument because I wanted to write a hero theme and not a villain theme, because that was the energy of the day. So I decided that the trumpet should be the hero instrument. So I added some trumpet and experimented with how the tuba and the trumpet played together, or clashed and were chaotic. Then I realized it was time to add some cello, an instrument that I am comfortable writing with, and so I reached for it. I called it my emotional support cello. So I started playing around with that line a little bit. I then ended this first recording session by recording a more chord-based piano part to set the foundation of the piece, and then go back and add the other instruments over it later. And that's how the first day working on this piece ended. The next day, I did a clean take of the piano chord part. I then did some quantization, which means I'm snapping everything onto the grid, which means that things are landing on the correct beats. This is honestly a little tricky, having written this in 5/4. I think there was a little bit of an instinct to make it in 4/4, because we're just not used to doing things in 5/4. So snapping things in is always just a little complicated, but it's important to get that foundation. And it makes all these silly little sounds when you do it. Anyway, after I had everything all lined up, I started distributing that piano part to the string instruments. So this is extremely basic, and if I had a little bit more time, I would have made more robust parts. But for the sake of this exercise, what I did was just copy the lines from the piano part into the individual instrument channels, and I just did cello, viola, and violin. It was super basic, but it does the job, and it sounded a lot better than just putting a general strings plugin over the piano part. Once the foundation of the orchestra was set, I was able to go back and tweak the tuba and the trumpet part and get those all lined up. I really wanted to make that little call and response thing with the tuba work, but it wasn't really working, so that did go away. But it does make me happy to see it again, going back and looking at this video. Alright, so then we got to the next day, and I opened up the session, and I heard this. And after doing some troubleshooting and asking Google and fretting about it for a little bit, I logged in and out of the session, and the problem was fixed. So I moved on from there. So this last day of working on the project, a lot of what I did is I lined up all the notes in the melody, did a lot of tweaking there. And then once that was all set, I started adding more to the percussion section. So I added a second drum line, found another big boomy drum to put in there, and I also added this really cool cymbal roll. So what I did is I found a cymbal crash, and then I reversed it to make this cool riser at the very end. And I had a lot of fun setting that up. And then when I went through with the reverb, I made sure that it had a lot of reverb on it so that there's this last echo at the very end. And that's basically it. This process is more or less what I would do for the first draft of a podcast theme song. Like if someone was doing a podcast about Andor or something in that world, this is probably what I would come up with. This isn't the final version of the track, but this is usually what a track looks like when I bring it to a client for feedback. Anyway, Thank you for watching the journey of my creative process, and feel free to leave a comment with a word to inspire the next one. Or if you need music for a project, hit me up. My website is in the description. See y'all next time.